it's running. I put the distributor in, but I didn't time anything, and I had to go and advance it. It really wasn't right. But the other thing I think I got to get, and I remember this, these two connectors on the coil, it's made to be a slip and fit, and it's a special plug. It's all the Fords have it too, and I know they're troublesome as it is. I got a bag that's blown away. They're troublesome as it is, but the problem is that it's on your car too, and it's got to be done. That being said, the carburetor ain't so great. Either that or it needed to be advanced a lot more. Sometimes they're set differently than these, the original one. Now, as you can hear, it sounds pretty loud to me. And when I kick it down, it's probably going to be louder. The more I look at it though, your exhaust is hanging low. So if this guy picked it up with the forklift, chances are he fucked something up. I hear it, but it's somewhere in the front here, because the front is hanging lower than the chassis. So if they're gonna fucking pick it up with a goddamn forklift, that's obviously a problem. It sounds like it's right here. Oh, there it goes. I think this hanger, I don't know if you can see it. Yeah. That hanger is kind of rotted, but it was holding the pipe, and I'd have to look from the other side. But it looks like they lift up the pipe and they broke it from the thing and it ripped out the piece of the pipe. I think that's all it is. Hopefully I can fix that. Yeah, so I'm feeling a whole bunch of exhaust like blowing directly my way. Oh yeah. I was just looking for the temperature wire because your temperature gauge doesn't work, but there's not a drop of exhaust coming out of here, so hopefully the catalytic converter is just bad and it didn't like break into pieces and end up in the brand new muffler that you have. That would be sucky. But I'm just trying to find the circuit for the temp sensor. I think I found the sensor for the temp. I think I found the thing for the temp sensor. This thing here was just hooked in here. And that's a plug. That's where antifreeze is. It's painted blue though, but this whole engine was painted blue. So I don't know if, to me that seems like where it should be. Because there's no other place. Oh, there's another one right here. So this could be it. Either one. There seemed to be a lot of emissions on this thing, and maybe they eliminated it because the wire was broken when, you know, maybe they pulled the engine and rebuilt this engine, because it does seem like it's awfully clean for certain things, you know. But there's your new solenoid, new module, new fuel pump, new distributor, and we got to get the right plug for that. I put a new fuel line as well, rubber fuel line. What else? I put the air filter, I put the fuel filter. Carburetor is not 100% right, but it's very it's very possible there's nothing wrong. Because it doesn't run that bad, but it has no power, and it's only coming out of that loud exhaust right there. So I think that's the wire, and I think the gauge, somebody grounded it, so probably the gauge is fried, and it just went down to nothing. But I saw you have other gauges in the trunk, so something to think about in the future. But the exhaust needs to be fixed for sure. This is kind of a godsend. They actually, this is probably, it had to be one of the original problems with the car, you know, that the you know, between the coil thing not being right, because it didn't start on me initially, and I played with that wire, then it started. So I don't know if it's something to do with it, you know, back then, but the exhaust having a hole in it allows you to drive it, because sometimes that'll happen. Like you'll start, it'll actually run, something will come out the exhaust, and you won't necessarily get those symptoms, and it just dies, and then you're like, why is it dying? There's absolutely no way to get the exhaust out. So but so far so good. Okay, I sent the 2 minutes and 5 second video. I was trying to, and Instagram says no way. So apparently it can only be like a minute and a half. Anyway, so put the light on here. Come on, phone. Plug right there. A pipe plug, you know, this is, and a pipe plug there. And it probably had 2 emissions components. It looks like people remove the emissions, but this has to be the wire because it's so close to either one of these. And it was grounded. It was like hooked over here. And so it probably fried the gauge, unless it wasn't grounded, but I'm going to try to ground that and see if the gauge goes up. But the exhaust is completely clogged. There's not a drop coming out of here, and that's why there was so much. I mean, nothing. I barely feel a breeze. So hopefully the catalytic converter didn't break in the muffler and all that, but it's probably one of the original problems with the car, and that's why when it's actually not an exhaust leak, it'll actually, you know, basically stop running, and then it's hard to figure out why. I just cut out the front part. I cut that bracket there. I was trying to get it out of the thing, but apparently they bend it in there. But I first cut off the back part, and when I did that, the muffler fell on the ground. Only thing that's left there is the weld, and this is the condition of the pipe right here. Look at the way they weld these hangers. That's pretty horrible. Oh ah boy. These are loose. You know, well, I mean the bolts aren't loose, but what do you call it? When you move the pipe, it just moves all around, so there's constantly a leak from there. Let's see what I find. Nice. Okay, so this pipe is in pretty good shape. This right here was kind of bowed, because people tend to bowed this way. People, no, when you it was bowed this way, because they over tighten the bolts. The center doesn't move anymore, and then they keep going. I had another flange, but it didn't have the same bolt spacing, and then I drilled out my holes, and because my holes were actually smaller, and then that's when I realized it's not the same distance. So this is fine. I mean, it's awfully thick, so I put a big tool in here and I compressed it and made it straight again. But somebody was smart. They put brass nuts, and the thing is that these things, you know, I'm putting grade 8 ones in. I'm not sure 100% right now. These are actually 5/16 washers that fit over 3/8 threads, and they fit perfectly. It's just that when it gets to the boss of the bolt, it won't be able to, you know, go over it. But you don't have a boss. So and you see they put too big of washers, and they get all, you know, banged up. So that's why there's no gasket actually. It's just a solid fit. So this is going to go right back on with not much problem. So while making all of this, you know, I had not bent this, but I had this pipe, and I just had to expand it over here. So I expanded it and I slid it on, and when I slid it on, this pipe moved. So I was like, oh, it's not really in the right place. And the whole thing was I planned this, because this is a short run and this is a long run on this side. So I did it on the long run, so it went up higher, because I'm like, that's really down too much. And I really wasn't putting two and two together. I thought somebody had just bent the pipe a certain way, and it wasn't that optimal. So now that I realized that the flange was loose, and that's straightened out now, I'm going to have to open this side and put this over here. And I didn't expand the other pipe, thank God, because then I'll just put the expansion, you know, the other pipe in there. Because right now it's too close to the body now that everything's up. So I'm going to expand this, and then when I put it here, I made a really tight fit here. Because I'm going to be honest, on this original pipe, I don't think I'm going to weld it. I think it's better to put a clamp there. And that way it could be removed, possibly, if it had to be serviced. And it's such a, like, I really, like, went really slow trying to, my expander is a very slow process, but it does a really good job. Come on. So I don't want to get too long in this video, but I'll send another video. So, as you can see, I have this pipe here that I expanded, and it's just expanded enough. I was thinking about putting a clamp here, but originally when I had done all this, I was sizing up all these pipes, and I said, you know what, this pipe is hanging down too low. I'm going to use the long run on this end, and now it looks like I have to turn it around, because now what happens, once I put this pipe on, I got it on, and then the pipe moved. I'm like, oh, that's loose. So there was no gasket, like I said, it was solid, so it just had to be positioned right. So like the last guy who did the exhaust, he basically positioned it with a loose flange in the front. So you always had a leak, you know, among other things, among those crappy welds. I'll be able to weld this guy right to this, so that'll keep it up. But this thing here is going to be flipped around. I'll expand it. That way it holds, you know, it holds the place. And, you know, it'll still connect all this, and it'll be a little bit lower. Because now that this is up in the proper place, this is a little too high. As you can see, it's right at the body. Right against the body, so I got a nice tight fit here. So I gotta get it off, and then I'll straighten it out. So I was looking, I was like, wow, somebody's lazy. That's the thing that holds the shock together in the package, and then you flex it. You know, you push it in, and then you remove that, but they just like cut one side and left the other one side on without cutting it, so that was lazy. But then I look over here, I'm like, oh boy, that's bent. Probably from the forklift. Edge of the spring bolt got hit, and then you look over here, go to that side, that shock was scraped right there. They did a nice job. Unfortunately, you know, if you try to bend this back, it might snap off, so rather than doing that, you either just leave it and see how long it lasts, or you try to bend it back and be ready to change shocks, but you know, you'll be fine. So I cut down the pipe here, so I had clean metal to weld. It came out awesome. This new welder is pretty fucking awesome. My only problem is, like, this looks like a Flowmaster. It looks like but it's not a Flowmaster. It's more of a thinner steel, but you see it's a welded muffler. So that's usually a sign of high quality, but I don't know if you could tell by listening. Unfortunately, that muffler sucks because it's awfully loud back here, but at least it's not leaking. So you'll be in the car, you won't even hear it, you know. I got a little leak up front here. It looks like it's slightly leaking from the flange, so I didn't want to go crazy tightening that flange because I don't want to bend it again, but sometimes that's what you got to do in order to get it sealed, because it's not a perfect science. But also because the catalytic converter is clogged, I'm hoping that the exhaust manifold gasket isn't leaking. It's something you can deal with, but sometimes the exhaust manifold, because it's one gasket, like this is exhaust, this is intake, and it goes exhaust, intake, or in this case, exhaust, intake, 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 and then exhaust, and then intake, intake, you know. So sometimes the exhaust gasket, if it has a leak, can infect the intake gasket and then cause a running condition then if the intake gasket's leaking. All right, so I tightened the front flange all the way. It's definitely not leaking from there. It's leaking from the exhaust manifold. This is the original thing, and what I did is I welded it to a muffler clamp, so that if you unbolt the muffler clamp, the pipe will come off of it, you know. And I only clamped it up here. I had all these clamps, so I didn't have to buy anything. I had everything for this exhaust. I basically didn't have to buy a damn thing. So that's all clamped up. I like it like that, just in case. It wasn't leaking even without it being welded. You know, I had no clamp on there when I was testing it. So it's very, very secure. You know, I'm very happy with this. So at least it's not going to fall out anytime soon. And it's tucked way up now. so it's not going to be hanging down nearly as much, and it's pretty awesome. And it's user friendly in the end because I put the clamp, and yeah, that's it. It's pretty good, and no catalytic converter. And I just touched it up with some paint on the welds. And the back one I'm not even gonna bother. It's all good now. Okay, I think one last video. So you see these plugs right here? Somebody removed them. They removed all your emissions, so they put these plugs in their place. But the original pipe here, you can see how there's one here, one right here, but on the other side it's gone because it's snapped off, and I can feel the exhaust come right out of there. So it's not leaking from the gasket, it's just leaking from that broken pipe there. Maybe I'll try to tack weld it, maybe it'll sound a little quieter. Alright, I don't know if you can see that. Where am I? Yeah. The exhaust manifold was like melting on me. I had a hard time. I didn't realize it was melting at first. But I kept touching it and touching it and touching it. And every time I would start it up and shut it off and start it up and shut it off. And I think there's another leak. I think like most of the leak that we hear is still there. But I was feeling it coming out of there, and it's going right onto the carburetor. I'm like, yeah, you know what, let's take care of it. I'm reaching in, the door's wide open. For a half hour now, I have this door open. I took the key out of the ignition. I don't know why, as I kept restarting it. I would weld it a little bit, come back and restart it. I don't know what the fuck I did with the key. It seems like I wonder if I put it on the dashboard and it went down the defroster vent. I'm like, I can't find it anywhere. This is so stupid. I didn't move from the spot. So that's what I've been doing. But anyway, everything's going well. So I told myself, reach over, open this door, and come in through this way. And I'm like, let me just see my point of view from here. Oh my God. Can you believe I had them in ignition, I shut them off, and they must have got like hung up, and I ended up flipping them out, and they end up all the way over here. This is what I just spent a half hour looking for when it was right here. I was putting magnets down there and fucking, you know, I have a mechanical fingers, and I'm like, it's got to be there somewhere. I don't see where I could have gone. But it literally just fucking must have flicked out of my hand because I was starting it, shutting it off, starting it, shutting it off. Oh my God. Oh well. See, originally I was just trying to weld the hole. Now that I got it running again after misplacing the keys. So there's something louder than this little tiny fucking thing here. But it's something below it, it seems like. Below where I welded, like the gasket, but right there. So hopefully, like I originally said, it doesn't affect something else. The thing is, as soon as you rev it, it goes away. It's possible the manifold is cracked. You know, they do crack. They do sell a new manifold, but that's a huge job. But anyway, just figured I'd send that to you. I did the best I could with the exhaust all in all, but it's buttoned up and it's mounted right. It's just that this muffler is not so hot. But it might just be the way the 6-cylinder sounds. So just to show you, I'm pulling the trigger on this because that is the exhaust gasket, I think. Something severely moved here. That might actually be the intake, now that I see the way it's like this, the thinner one. It's like they put a thick gasket on top of a thin gasket. And it just may be how this is done, and probably the newer gaskets probably don't even go like this. But that's, I don't know, the thinner gasket is over here. I guess that was over here. And now it's over there. But I didn't realize this. Like this kind of looks normal because you kind of like dip in the gasket from there. But I'm honestly not even sure. And this This is where I attempted to weld it, because like I said, whoever took out the emission plugs, they broke it off in there. They couldn't put the plug in there, they just had the original one in there. So it's kind of a mess. Yeah. So I got one more bolt, and then this thing should come off, hopefully, and then we shall go from there. Alright, I have to say this is very WTF. This is the intake port right here, and this is an intake port, and I feel it was leaking there. It is running almost really too bad for the carburetor, but I'm going to rebuild the carburetor. I'm going to try to sand down that intake manifold, and I got a new exhaust manifold coming. It says 1981, but it looks like the main leak that I kept hearing underneath there was this tube, which is an EGR tube, which is useless. But you would never be able to get this off anyway, and just basically by unbolting it, I heard a crack. And you can see the white exhaust was already leaking. It was hanging by a thread, and it's hard as a rock. There is no bend left in this. So I'm curious if this could be cleaned out or something, or if an EGR plate can be made. Not really. I'm just going to put a plug in there somehow. And I got to figure out, so this is like some kind of electric heat riser, so the gas can get atomized. I thought like the exhaust would do that, and it's not. I'm not even sure if this works. Not sure if that's a aftermarket, what do you call it? You know, a crimped wire, but probably we'll just leave that alone. Don't even know if this gasket is available. This is definitely 1981 for this 82. I guess this car had a computer of some sort, and they basically just cut out the oxygen sensor, which I'm like, what's going on with that? So probably this was one of those electronic feedback motors, and honestly everything is probably the same. The only thing that's different is the carburetor. So the carburetor they probably put in from another car that's non-electrical feedback, and they just plugged off that. I guess that's relatively smart, because I guess it's something that I would be doing. After looking at this now, it'd probably be good just to get the regular old Mopar 2-barrel off a 318 or something like that. I bet it'll work just fine. But obviously the linkage means something. But they sell new carburetors, but these are pretty easy to rebuild. I'm going to do my best to give it a shot and see what happens. And definitely got to get this guy cleaned. Yeah, a lot going on here. But and these bolts here were spread apart. So that was part of the problem I had originally trying to get the flange off when I did the exhaust, and now when I took it off, it was even harder, because when you bolt it on, the flange, bends a little bit, and it was bent, and it probably just bent again. I didn't have a flange that would really fit, and the flange that I did have, I enlarged the holes, and it was way too big. The hole was right, the size, the overall size, but the spacing was different. I'm wondering if it's just because of that, but I really can't do anything about it now because I already put the rest of the exhaust system on. But it would be nice to really have this thing all cleaned up and figure out what can be done. Oh, I see. They have antifreeze, so this only works when the car is starting to first warm up, I guess. And that's right. The heater hoses go through here, so that keeps it fuel atomized. Even this electrical wire, if it didn't work, it wouldn't be a big deal. Yeah, the antifreeze does way more. So, and all these things pop off. A different one I think popped off on me. No, this is the one that popped off on me. And somebody had this on, and I took it off here to put it on here because I test drove it. And it literally popped off. All these little vacuum lines are kind of very, very like soft and like just cracked and falling apart. So I think this car is going to run good when all is said and done now, because this is a bunch of obvious problems. So I don't trust that intake gasket. These are running like super lean in the center here. It's weird. But that's weird how it's running lean in the center and rich on the outsides, but could have been the way it was tuned up before. Not quite sure. who knows if this EGR valve is like stuck open a little bit even. So these are a few things I'm going to research tonight, and I got to see what I can do about this exhaust thing. Hopefully they come with a plug. You know what it is? It'll come with a plug for the exhaust, and then I can just unscrew that. It's not going anywhere, so that doesn't matter. It just goes to the EGR port, so that's no big deal. So yeah, and this old cast iron, it's just sometimes hard to weld. As you can see, it was still some air, some exhaust coming out of here, but primarily it was this, because like, wow, I really got a lot of that, and it's probably welded underneath here. I just kept having to overlap it, and I really didn't have a good chance at it. I was just trying to make it better than what it was, but ultimately, if I shine the light through it, it looks, I think it's buttoned up. See, but that's the broken off thing that was in there. See, these plugs only go so far. And this was the original one broken in there. Oh, you know what? That looks like a crack. Aha. Yeah, so it could have been also leaking from a crack, which why I kept maybe feeling it. Maybe because I kept going this, and there's a little hairline crack right here where this white mark is. And there's so much calcified shit on the outside, you probably can't see it. But I kept feeling it, and I kept going after this. But yeah, that's a crack, which is expected. It's old. All right, let's see how this carburetor starts to turn out. Carburetor is apart and cleaned, or as clean as it's gonna be on the AMC. It's staining in there. I really can't get. Maybe try to, physical scraping. It came out pretty clean. It's just wet. Whole lot of brake cleaner. Carburetor cleaner. Alright, it's better. You're gonna get all these little dips and valleys. They're made to hold crap, and you didn't have a ton, but you had some. But with an AMC, it could have been a lot worse because gas tanks are not available. I don't know if I can even hear that. Came out pretty good. Still, it looks worse on camera than it actually is. But these deep wells, they're all for holding shit, basically. And, carburetor rebuilders, they get special carburetor paint that doesn't come off, and they can actually spray this. Whether or not they spray the inside, I don't know. But honestly, aside of glass beating it or something like that, it's fine. This is not going to be an issue. I was using walnut shells to clean carburetors, and it was coming out pretty good, and I didn't have much problems, but shit, we get stuck and then have to clean it again, and it's an extra step where, this is something that you really, the main thing is that the ports are clean, all the, you run through all of the holes. If everything's clean, it's going to work, but this is going to be good. All these deep wells, they're made for holding shit. And like I said, you don't have a lot of shit in your car, and it's an AMC, so that's actually impressive. There was a film, like the film that actually gotten on this right here. This was in the gas, so that was fresh. That's bare copper or brass, whatever this is, and brass. And this side was tarnished, and it's just not going to come off without like sandblasting it. But again, it doesn't affect the function, and it's not coming off, so it's not really an issue. So, a board with a belt sander that's cut open and screwed to the wood. I make my own milling machine, and as you can tell, it's touching here first before it's really touching here, and I've been at this for about 5 minutes. And you see how it's angled here? It's actually taking this way and not that. That's because these things warp. And this is aluminum, the other one is cast iron. The cast iron is definitely warped, I'm sure of it. And then it starts to manipulate this and the heat and everything being right next to it. So, I mean, you can look down the side and say, oh, it looks pretty straight. I mean, you really can't tell until you do something like this. So, I actually did this to exhaust manifolds just recently. So, I says, you know what, I'm going to apply it to this now. And it's going to come out good. It's funny how they cut it. It's actually pretty deep. And it's hard to get it straight, you know. Still working at it. I expected it to go a lot quicker because it's aluminum, but it's taking a little longer than I thought. But it's alright. Well, that took longer than I cared for it to take. This thing it was getting clogged a lot. Plus, it's getting old. So, done. Okay. Sorry about all the mess. Box broke. Anyway, this manifold, where that pipe is for the EGR, that's a bolt thread, a regular fine thread bolt thread, and it's supposed to have a, you know, an inverted flare fitting inside there. Not fitting, but it's part of the manifold. See, normally I would think that would be a pipe thread going to a flare thread, and then you'd have to get the right adapter, and that way you could change the adapter, God forbid you have a problem, and whatnot. This new manifold, which looks great, I had to tighten all these up. These are pipe thread. Don't know how the old one was. I'm not sure now. It looks like those are pipe thread, the more I look at it, and I don't know how the original emission tubes were in there. This is basically with the plug they have for the oxygen sensor if you're not using it. And then they had this other plug here, and this thread's in, but it's also a bolt thread. So they put a bolt thread and they made a plug with bolt thread, but then they don't have the flare in there. It just goes straight in. So I can screw this all the way in until infinity. Which is not good. I try to run this tap through, but this is a 1/2-inch tap, and I'm like, damn. And I don't really want to drill it out to a 3/4, you know, thing. But even this guy like barely catches at the end. Like a whole bunch of threads just kind of just start. And it would be nice to have a nice brass plug in there. So what I'm going to do in lieu of all this, two things. I can try to weld a washer onto here. The problem is that it's got to be perfect because I'm going to seal it on the washer because I don't want it to fall in. So I'm probably going to buy a bolt, this thread if I can find it, and I will either cut it this short, something to that degree, and put a seal on this side, like a copper washer of some sort. That's the only other thing I can think of. I may just have to get a big washer and weld it and hope it comes out flat. That's the hard part, because you just want to make sure that if you're going to do this, you're going to evenly put, you know, pressure on it, you know, and it's got to be a thick enough washer that when you tighten this, it's going to have rigidity so it can crush the washer. So the weld has got to be good, but then there's not much of this hex here after you put a nice thick washer, so it's going to be tricky. Best just to find another bolt, and a short one at that. Obviously, this goes in like twice as far as this does. I know it doesn't look like it. No, it doesn't. Actually, it's more like the same size. But yeah, that should have been an inverted thread piece in there. This should not have been a regular plug, and I guess I got lost in the Chinese translation of these things. So this is why I paid only $65 for this plus tax. It was really a good deal. I think it's nothing wrong with it. It just, that's got to be dealt with. That's all. Not a huge deal. Okay, so despite what people think, a lot of these threads, when they start getting bigger like this, they're not fine enough. So there are finer threads than your standard, you know, fine thread and coarse thread on American threads. So basically, you know, I went to the store and I'm like, oh my God, this is not the same as the fine they had there. This is even finer, so I thought it was metric, but I didn't even have anything to go off of. And this definitely wouldn't be metric. That being said, they still made this wrong, because even if you try to screw one of these things in, it would bottom out. It makes the seal on this, not on the threads. So since there's nothing on the bottom there's no way to do this. So this is going to be fun. I'm honestly almost leaning against just putting Loctite on this. I don't know if it's going to be good enough, you know, to be honest. I hate to ruin the threads completely, you know, by welding it in or something like that, but I'm not even sure we can get a copper washer that big right now, you know. I'm sure somebody has one, but it prevents me from putting it in today, which would be a problem, because I got to get other things done. So the other thing I was thinking about is making it a 3/4 pipe thread, but because I really hate to put something with a seal on it, but I'd like to maintain the thread, so because it's useless now the way it is with these things, unless it didn't rotate. If it didn't rotate and it was able to bottom out and put a seal right on the you know, the hex, but obviously that leaves a problem for the other side. It leaves a problem knowing where it's going to end. I don't even know if they sell these. This would just totally leak out right in between because there's nothing to seal on it. So ultimately, it's not getting put back on. EGR valve wasn't being used anyway. So I got a few things to think about. Not sure which way I'll go yet. But they should have made it like this with the flange on it. It would have solved the problem and gave a washer. Totally would have solved the problem if you're not using that. Alright, so I ended up taking out all these plugs and I put some joint compound on it. And I decided to also put it on this. I opted this way because I felt it was still accessible to some degree. God forbid, you know, I hate to ruin the integrity of the original design, even though there is something flawed with it. With this, I told you how the thread on this thing just goes all the way through. They basically made this wrong. I think it can be dealt with on the car because the manifold goes over this all, you know, but I staked it. And I put a ton. I put a whole bunch. So now you can see from any direction, like, if it starts to come out. And the hole is not even flush. You know, like it's flush up here, but it's down over here. So the way they made the plug was slightly off center as well. So the cast iron is sticking out here. And you know, it is, if you put a wrench on that, you'll definitely force it out. It won't be an issue, you know. So, and it's not going to go in. It's going to only come out. If it's going to come out, but the exhaust is going to go to the path of least resistance for sure, and it's going to come out of here. It's not going to be forcing its way out of there always, and you know, we'll deal with it if there's ever an issue, but I don't think so, you know. So that's my solution. It's quick and easy. Just use a chisel and a hammer, and I just don't think it's going to be an issue anymore. I like the way AMC dealt with this because they have two separate gaskets that overlap. I originally thought, ouch, I just hit my head on a sharp part of this hood. Ah, that's going to be bleeding. Anyway, what I thought was a messed up gasket was just, it's the way to go over the exhaust manifold, because they actually make it so that you could do this in steps. Now I took them out together, and when I took them out together, I can hear that, I can feel that thing was hanging by a thread, so I just pulled it and it broke. You know, that the EGR tube, which is well useless on these cars. Oh my god, that's sharp. Ugh. Anyway, oh yeah, that's blood right there, that wetness. Yep. I just rubbed it on my head. That's wonderful. Anywho. So they have a nice dowel pin there that holds the gasket, and the gasket's very good quality, I must say. I'm very happy with the gasket. The gasket that was there was a good quality gasket too. It was like header quality, you know. I just don't understand the whole double gasket thing, but because if you have a warped manifold, it's, you know, intake manifold for that matter, it just compounds everything, and you have two gaskets, you know. I just feel that way. Not that I'm going to put one gasket. I feel the designers did it this way for a reason, I think. So we'll find out. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm wondering if I got to put this on the dowel pins at the same time. I somehow don't think so, but that's interesting. This fits on a lot loose. The other one was like a tight fit. This was more of a loose fit. So I'm gonna play when I have two hands and tend to the cut I just got on my head. But that being said, everything's going smoothly. I think, like I said, the other thing I did with the plug won't be an issue. I just got to line up that the flange, and because I have it bolted now, I have a hanger holding it. So it's probably going to be a tight fit. Although there's some movement here, but it most likely won't be an issue. But you put, I think, the 4 bolts that hold it there, and that way you could do it in steps instead of doing the whole thing at once. So that's the good thing about this particular setup here on that AMC did. I must say it's pretty decent in this sense. But the more I look at this, the more I'm like, yeah, this valve cover looks a little funny. It's like a plastic valve cover. This is why it says torque to 28 inch-pounds right on the thing. Although I see the gasket going all the way around, it's possible it just needs to be kind of tightened up a little bit. But I'm not quite sure how it tightens up. It looks like inside here is just, you pop this off and there might be bolts there. So I don't want to go crazy. I think it's better to figure this out because it's possible they even sell a new one. It's more. There's a couple of bolts over here. That's so odd. Yeah, I'm gonna have to research that. And I don't think I'm doing that right now. That's something that could be done afterwards. It's not really a big deal. I'm more interested in getting the gauge to work, which it will, and getting all this car to run right because it really wasn't running right for multiple reasons. So, all right, I'm gonna start putting it together. So, looking at the old gasket, it's kinked there and it's kinked there, and I'm like, what's going on here? Now this is a different gasket, and it's quite a bit thinner and harder, but I'm like, there's some issue here. Because I tried putting this gasket on the car right now after I bolted on the manifold, and it's not going on. And it's not going on because there's no relief in this gasket. There's no relief on the old one, and it looks like they just like overlap it. I'm like, how can you just overlap it? That's a perfect flat surface, you know? So it's like if you put it on this thing here, you can see it's hitting that corner. And this is like way off now because of that. So it's like you got to kind of like just force it. And it's very possible it's a little different on the this original one, but it kind of looks close, and the way the markings are, it definitely seems like it was right there. So either the original gasket, the right gasket, is better made, or there's a relief. Maybe I didn't even look to see that. Maybe there's a relief in here, but as soon as you mill it, how would you be able to figure that out? Yeah, look at this. So this is the exhaust, and this is where the intake gasket goes, and it looked like it was sealing, but that's because of the thickness of the gasket. But that's put pressure on the manifold, and eventually it's going to warp it, you know. Unfortunately, this cannot be used without drilling it out and start playing with it. It's useless, to be honest, after the car warms up, and it really wasn't on. However, I don't know if it's supposed to have a hose clamp on it or what, but this just broke off. There's nothing holding it, and then it's not like they gave me rivets with it, so I'm like, yeah, it's really just for emissions when the car is cold. When it warms up, it's fine. You know, it doesn't even apply, you know, and it makes the car go slow. Anyway, that being said, going back to this, I should take that out just to show everybody the difference between that. Look how split this is. The flange went right on compared to the other one. But, yeah, the gasket is disturbing. So, and the manifold is already down. Like, these are smaller holes. So this is where you tighten it. You let the weight of the thing go down on it. And these are bigger holes. So, you know, you just tighten them where they fall, you know. And all these other holes, they seem like they're lined up with the semicircles, so that's not a problem. But I'm going to take a little die grinder and put a little relief in this, because I think that's what's supposed to happen technically. This looks funny otherwise, you know. Just a little tiny bit, that's all it needs. You know, it's either that, I could have grinded the manifold, which wouldn't have been a bad move, but I don't know why this is not figured out when they manufacture this, because honestly it looks like the same thing on the original gasket, because You go here, again, this was definitely overlapping to some degree, because, and you can see, like, this wasn't making its full seat. Here, this one seemed to be making a better seat. It just like they forced the gasket out of the way. I mean, maybe this one was a little more manipulable. But it seems like the separate gasket is so you can change the intake gasket without having to change the exhaust gasket. So they put a double gasket on there, so it just kind of peels off. Not sure if that gasket, it really depends on the brand of the gasket, the type of gasket. This one definitely looks like a reusable gasket, but it seems like they built it in here, or maybe it is just melted on. I don't think it's supposed to be, though. I think you have to use common sense with this. I can't see putting a piece of gasket under the manifold when it already has its own gasket. You're just going to warp the manifold. And as far as the intake is concerned, the reason why they make two gaskets is obviously they know that this thing warps. You know, because usually they are also cast iron. But it's nice that it's aluminum, because it's nice and light. But that's why I went and I built it down. But I don't trust this, so I'm going to put a notch in these gaskets one way or the other. Either with a die grinder. I don't think I have a hole puncher, but I think it'll work out in the end. Just a little notch. As long as the gasket seals on the manifold, it's fine. What goes over here is really just so you can have something to hold it, you know. Alright, angle grinder. And boom. And boom. That's all. Fits perfect. Well, this is really unfortunate. And I've tightened it 3 times and started up. Actually louder than it was before. I can't win. Looks like there's a defect in the exhaust manifold. Right in the cast iron, either by the parting line or something. I don't know. But it's pretty nasty. And there's no way that it's leaking from the gasket, in my opinion. There's something else wrong. Unreal. So, it seems to be leaking. This is the back from underneath. This is the last one. Seems to be leaking in there somewhere. I mean, you feel it. The manifold seems right on the gasket. Can't really tell. It's almost like it's coming from behind this thing. That part of the casting. I am just a little too shocked right now. Oh, why does this happen to me? I wish I could see something a little more definitive. Let's see. I guess I'll play back this video to see. But that's what I'm up against. I can't believe it. It looks so good. Kinda trying to look from the top right now. Oops, I'm gonna start it and shine it from the top here. I feel it coming out of the bottom, but it feels like it's coming out of that that piece of casting. I mean, it's loud. the top. Feel it right here. What the hell? I cannot believe how loud that is. So I just ripped it all apart. Gaskets came off easy. Kind of looks like it's leaking from here. And when I look carefully at the gasket, like it's not leaking there. That first part of the gasket. But you see how much more metal there is? And when I go over here, like I can see right through. Something I didn't account for. There's like almost nothing there. I mean, it just happened to be, that's why it's not sticking here, where it's starting to stick on the other ones. If I can peel this off very carefully. Not that it matters, it's probably got to come off anyway. It looks like I got it before anything cured, but I mean, it was so fucking loud. I'm just shocked. And now, it ends up being I was able to take this all off without actually taking off the belt. I only unbolted the bracket. So, I mean, it's barely contacting, and that's just about where it looked like it was leaking. That's the bottom of the gasket, yeah. It really wasn't sticking there yet. It's very little bit, very little on each one. That's a little disturbing. I don't know how much different it really is here. So when I line up this gasket, that little bit makes a big difference. Son of a bitch. Fuck my life. What I'm trying to I'm like, well, I've always put the gaskets on like that. If I went the other way, what would that equal? It's still very little, because then it would pull away. Yeah, there's no difference. That fucking sucks. Manifold's a little hot, and it's a little wedged in there because I didn't take off this thing, but I'm curious to match it up to the old one to see how much more meat there is on the things and where the hole placement is. I'm gonna try that next. So you can see this little section here. That's where the exhaust was coming right out of. And if the head is just slightly off, you know, I just cleaned it with the wheel, but I mean, this thing has been cleaned more than once. Who knows if somebody went a little too far with it? But the old one was not. The old one really, You know, I can't say that definitively, but the old one wasn't leaking that much. But honestly, a smaller gasket would do the trick. You know, I mean, all of these seem like they're you know, these here in the center have more meat on them, but the two ends are very close to nothing there. And just the way the gasket was, that the front, you know, didn't leak. Oh boy. I hate to put silicone on a gasket like this. Sometimes it's necessary though. But that's a huge fucking bummer. I gotta see if I can find a different gasket now. This is the old gasket, which it's more of a compression type gasket. It's a better gasket, I feel, you know, but right now locally there's not much else I can do, I can get. But even some of these intake ones seem awfully big, you know, compared to the holes that are there. These intakes seem okay, but the exhaust, you can tell by looking at it, like this one is the same as this one, and it's sealed. And when you line it up like this, there's a noticeable difference there. I mean, it's not a lot, but the port is so small on the car. I mean, it should even be even smaller, to be honest. It's kind of crazy, but I think I'm going to put a little bit of Right Stuff on there, but you know, I wouldn't trust Right Stuff by itself. You know, I'd want it at the edge of the gasket. There's literally like nearly nothing there. So that's the thing that's troubling. There's plenty exhaust manifold to cover the front part. But the back part here, that little tiny bit, and if there's any imperfection, you can see where the exhaust was leaking out right in there. I gotta put my finger there. It was just in focus a minute ago. But anyway, so there's, you can see how it actually compressed it up here, but it doesn't there. So the head may be off a little bit. You know, maybe somebody went through this already, you know. And let's see. I don't know if there's, I don't know if it feels like silicone or not or what, but there's something built up on here, right where it was leaking on the new one. But I'll put the light on. There wasn't much holding on this either, you know, it's just the way it is, I guess, but it doesn't make it not stupid. I can tell you that much. More time and money wasted for nothing. It really is. For something, really they should be getting this stuff right, you know. But you can tell by looking at it, it's definitely smaller. And you see, when it comes to this gasket, it's where the top line is. You know, let me take off the light now. That line is just like above the center line of this hole right here. This one is just, well, if you flipped it over, it'd be below, but it's just, you know what I'm saying? Like it's like at the 40% mark of the center. If the center hole was 50, this is like at 40, and this one, it's ahead of it, you know. Where this one, it seems like the top part is exactly 50%, and the bottom one is at 50%. So not only is it smaller, it looks like it's slightly moved up. I mean, you're talking about a little bit, but that 1/4 of an inch does all the work, you know. And look at this. Like that was the one, you could see the exhaust was hitting here. I think that's just a manifold. being cast a little differently on that one spot there. It's so bizarre that it could be so far off. See, like even this one here, this is how much I expect it to seal. Wait a minute, is that the top or the bottom? That is, yeah, this is the bottom. This is the top. So the top then doesn't seal as much then, whereas this one, I guess that's what they were trying to fix, perhaps. The top. See, this has more, I guess it's roughly the same of a mark it was making. It almost seems like the new manifold is in a better place. So the combination of having the better gasket and the new manifold, like the manifold is like an improvement, but the gasket that they gave is shit. It's so fucked up. Like look at the size of the exhaust hole in the center here even. You can see how the exhaust manifold does blow over it though, even though it's this big. So where these are noticeably smaller, you can see like over here, this was hanging in. But I wish it was like that on the end exhaust ports, you know? Like why should, well, I guess it's similar. I was saying that this height should be the same as the other heights. There's no reason for it to not be, you know? So this one does look about the same width as that. And you see they actually made a relief, like the relief I was cutting in the other one. They actually put it in here. This is just a material gasket. It's not, and that's just it. It's an aluminum intake. They gave that other gasket. It's more of an exhaust gasket, but yeah, I guess it's high heat. But I don't see how it really helps, you know. But oh well, time to get back to work. In retrospect, just even looking at this old manifold, new manifold. Look at the holes. The holes for exhaust are tiny. They're tiny little things. You can see how big the hole is. It's so unnecessary to have such a huge gasket. That's all you can really get. Don't kid yourself. That's actually smooth. I might have rusted with some antifreeze because I found the I have to change the sensor and antifreeze came out of it. So I don't know if that's rust from there, but I think it wasn't sealing that great forever, you know. I think it's part of the problem, but you know, taking off more is not necessarily gonna fix it. Not that this is taking off anything. You can see the mark that I was trying to make. I have a feeling it might have been also leaking there. Ah, boy. I think I'm going to put some right stuff on it. Because either the right stuff will also just blow out, or it will, it'll seal because the gasket's sealing. It's more of getting the gasket to stick and having it stay there. So it's smooth. I don't feel any old gasket on it really. And I went here with the wheel, you know, with the roll-arc disc. There really wasn't much. It kind of, you know, peeled off, you know, for the most part. So I didn't have to go crazy. Don't like going crazy with this stuff for exactly this reason. But being that it's at the back, I just think it's a perfect storm of different things that have happened. I may have to clean it more just to be certain. This is not usually an issue with exhaust gaskets. It really isn't. It doesn't. I'm not quite sure what the discoloration is. Like I said, I didn't go crazy with the things. Sometimes you can really burn into it and get it down to bare metal, but it's not the best thing to do. Alright, well, I'm going to mess with this a little more and then get this thing together. Okay, so this other stuff was just carbon from the exhaust because the ports are so small. But look at this. Huge difference. light on the phone. That's a huge difference from what it was yesterday, but I think I'm going to put a touch of right stuff around this port anyway. I think I just want to play it safe. It literally will do nothing if the gasket's doing its job. So, and if it's only the right stuff, it'll blow out. One other thing, I don't know if this is just with this head or this piece, like that metal right there. You see how like all these, that's the intake part. But everywhere that has an exhaust port, oh, this is the, hang on. Jesus, the way my phone shows it is off. Anyway, so there's plenty of meat behind there. There's a lot less meat on the last one. And it seems to be also on the front one. So they could have did a better job with putting more like metal underneath there. But I mean, to be honest, there might be a slightly more amount in the front, and that's why there's less issue. But compared to the other exhaust port here, it's night and day, you know. So that could have helped a lot. But I just wanted to add that in. It's just sometimes you just have bad days and parts aren't right, and Chinese parts are worse. Alright, I still don't get it, but as you can see, I was wrong about the notch. It just looks so much bigger, but apparently not. It's the same thing. It was bigger over here, but I have to take it. At least that gives you the room to notch it. Like over here got a little thin. So I'm going to try to do it with snippers. If not, I'll use the grinder again. So I just started it up ice cold. Eliminated a few vacuum lines. I haven't even turned the adjustment screws yet. I have warmed it up already once, but this is cold again because I had to play with the choke just a little bit. The smoke is I dripped some antifreeze as I changed the sending unit, and I do have to put more antifreeze in. We lost some. Now this is one of those chokes that probably warm up a little too quick. It's right at the brink. Not that it's going to stall, but like it should have been, I either should have left it on a little more. If you give it too much adjustment, then it may choke out at first and then it eventually catches up, which might be good for the winter, but for the most part, it's pretty good. The other thing sometimes you can do is turn up the fast idle again. That actually made it worse. You always got to play with it when it's cold and get it to warm up, and each time you do it you get a little bit further, you know. I got to do something about the choke wire being this close to heat. There's going to be some things burning off the new manifold. They put a coating on it. I put the putty on the on all of these plugs, so it'll be smoking off the leftover, the excess. Oh, look at that! It went back up again. I like that. That's good that it did that. That's what I was expecting it to do, actually, so that was weird that it went down. Maybe I touched something that released the linkage, but very smooth now. Despite me like playing with all the other, you know, stuff, I changed the coil. I mean the solenoid doesn't do anything for running, but I changed the module, fuel pump, I changed the distributor, and I fixed the plug for the coil, did a tune-up. The fucking thing still wouldn't get out of its own way. Of course, I'm pretty sure the, what do you call it, was clogged, the catalytic converter. So if you rev it high enough, it goes down. It looks like it'll catch up again. So this is where I'm actually going to lower it. Oh. That way, technically, you could drive in this mode. Oh, there's vacuum here. This thing went to a bunch of nonsense that I removed, but I forgot I was going to put a bolt in this. There's your antifreeze. Thermostat's going to open, and it's going to spill. Alright, let me tend to all of this and have two hands on everything and both my eyes instead of one eye on the phone. But it's getting there. I started smelling gas out of nowhere. And it's dripping like crazy. It's not dripping from the two lines there. Oh my God. I don't believe this. Apparently shit sits at rock auto and it goes bad. I think the weep hole is on the other side. I can't see right now, obviously, but this is just leaking from. Yeah, that looks like, I think it's the weep hole. How do I get this kind of luck? I didn't make you buy a cheap one. That's Delphi Technologies. I mean, it may have not been a lot of money, but it's definitely not a cheap one. And it's not like an old box from, 20 years ago. It's a new pump, but it was leaking right out of. It was either leaking out of the lip here where it's pressed together, or it was coming right out of the weep hole. And I think it was coming out of the weep hole. It's just the diaphragm that helps it breathe. Like when it goes up and down, air has got to go in and out of it. So if the seal breaks, it leaks out of there, and it kind of leaks. If it's going to leak, it leaks in a safer place. 7 pounds, not good. Somebody was doing it probably because his radiator looks old. I see you have another radiator back there, but it's not leaking, so it's throwing oil filter. So I'm gonna get it tuned first, and then I'll do a oil change. I tuned most of it the other day. Belt is a little squeaky, that's all. It might need a little more tightening. But this was never set up right, and I got it to be straight. There was something off with it, and the main reason for that is because there was an air pump here that was removed, and between, I didn't break it to you yet, but I bought you a new exhaust manifold. But I had the intake and the exhaust off because everything was messed up here, and I wanted it to be silent under the hood. So there was a crack in the manifold. That's why when I welded it, it didn't matter, because yeah, it might have been leaking where I welded it, but above that was a crack. Oh my God, fucking hood. Fucking welted my fucking head open. It almost made me look like I had hair. I had so much scab up there. Oh, I just hit it again. Anyway, this is your engine running. It sounds like the squeak is coming from the alternator. I'm going to spray the belt and see if it actually comes from that. It just might need a tightening. Anyway, it's idling low and nice. And when you rev it, when you floor it, it goes up quickly, but it goes down quickly. If it's too advanced, it'll take a long time to come down. If it's too retarded, it'll backfire. So there's something up with the mark on the harmonic balancer. This engine was changed or rebuilt, or something may have been swapped. And the harmonic balancer marks are not really on target, So, and I had to advance it more. So there was something up with the distributor. I put it in the way I found it. So I think because I'm all the way advanced pretty much. I'm not hitting the block, and it's in a good place. So I kind of don't want to touch it, but I got to tighten up the distributor, fully. But I may actually pull it out and move it over one, so there's still more room to adjust it. There's only room to retard it instead of advance it. But running really, really good. So, your brake is smelling pretty bad. He changed the brake lines, and he put a new bleeder in there, but the wheel cylinder still looks kind of old. But we got new ones. Yeah, I mean, that might have been done a long time ago, but that's not from 2 years, that rust. Obviously, the rest of it looks new. Yeah, the other thing that I don't kind of like is the fact that the rear... Oh, I still have it on zoom. Where am I? That's the new brake line going towards the front, so a lot of it was done, but this is an old brake hose. He never changed it, and sometimes that can get hung up, but right now I'm looking at the bottom of the drum here, and there's liquid. So your wheel cylinder's leaking. And what happens is, this is probably why it's hanging up. I smell the brakes. The fluid gets on the brakes, and then it makes them lock up. So ultimately, you needed all the brakes anyway, because that's what would have happened. Yeah, they could be a bad spring, but like I said, both of these, both sides, both of these shocks were bent. We'll just leave them like that because they're in and they're kind of new. Probably from the forklift. What else? Yeah, so I think I'm going to just see if I can get that rear brake hose. I think that's a smart move. The front, you know, you have control because it's connected to each wheel and each wheel steers, so if there was a pulling, you'd pull from one side or the other. You know, there's two hoses in the front, so like you could tell by the way the car drives, but the car does not pull, but it is holding back. And I can smell the brake on this side, so that's really what it is. And I'm gonna go drink my coffee, and then yeah, it's that. And son of a bitch, I cleaned this and I didn't realize it was wet. It didn't. I concentrated on the mark, but then I didn't get that. But didn't get the rest of the lettering. Apparently, I don't know. I took fucking pictures of it. I didn't see it, but it was wet more with the. Because I used the bleach white stuff to you know, that cleans the white walls. I figured that would be good, but man, this shit don't like to come off.